His faith was not without action. When God told him to do something, he did it. He knew it was God. He acted upon it. And what was the result of that? God called him his friend. And he was called the friend of God. Friend, as though you meet on equal terms. That's what a friend is. You're equal terms. God is treating Abraham that way, as though God is delighted to see Abraham. And Abraham is delighted to see God. I have a friend, he's not here in this world anymore, and I'd go to see him, and he'd say, I am glad to see you. And I would think of this section of Scripture, because I had preached on it before. And I adore this section of Scripture. Friend hailing friend, shaking hands, delighted to see each other. A beautiful picture, a possibility for all believers. But what is meant? He was a friend of Abraham, more than that. Well, we find out in Exodus 11. Moses, we read in Exodus 33, verse 11. So Yahweh spoke to Moses face to face as a man speaks to his friend. That's how God spoke to Abraham. Now, when God told Abraham he was going to have a kid in that 15-year period, silence. He walked by faith during that period of time. You may have had days in your life of Christ where God spoke to you, and you've done nothing differently. You've not backslidden. You've not walked away from the Lord, but you haven't heard from him in a very long time. Take courage. You're in a class with Abraham. Be faithful. We shall walk by faith, not by sight. We read that this morning from 2 Corinthians. And so this man Abraham, he says in verse 24, you see then that a man is justified by works, not by faith only. Here is a saying of the reformers, those who broke from the Rome and her popes, and they came out of that darkness, and this was one of their sayings, we are justified by faith alone, but not by the faith that is alone. And this is what they meant. You can say you believe all you want. What are you doing? So we've got a bunch of people here that act on their faith. They do serve. My concern is, where are the fresh and new servants? There should always be new sign-ups. People that say, I'm going to make this my church. I'm going to worship here. And we will say, we have a post for you. There's a place for you to serve. Not because we have these things we need done, but because God tells us to.